Thank you, Patrick. So now we'll take you through a little bit of the activity that's been going on over the last couple of years following the outline of the development plan that Patrick has mentioned. So where we've been moving is right across the world. And you'll see as soon as this next slide appears that we're working from the Asia Pacific across to Europe and to the Americas. And while we're waiting for the slide to click over, within each of these countries we have a national project manager. So we can see here Australia, where Patrick and I are based, across to Singapore, over to Europe, to Finland and the Netherlands, and then over to the Americas with the US and to Costa Rica. So in each of these countries we have a national project manager, and the responsibility of that person is to recruit schools for the project so that we can go through the research and development, that the NPM, that's the National Project Manager, can coordinate the data collection. The National Project Manager reports to the government, and most importantly, the National Project Manager in each country has been responsible for the customisation of the assessment tasks that we've been developing. So that means looking at the assessment tasks in terms of the appropriateness of those in terms of the culture, as well as in terms of language. And language, of course, is a really big issue for us because we have 3 non-English speaking nations and 3 with English as their first language. So across all of these countries we've been implementing the particular plan that Patrick was talking about. So we've been through the definition of constructs. We have then moved through to formulating the developmental continua, and then most importantly we've got down to the formulation of tasks. And so here we can see at the bottom of this screen the process that we've been in for the last 12 to 14 months of looking at teacher concepts or teacher views about the task concepts, looking at how students progress through cognitive laboratories to check the tasks, pilots of whole classes, and the trial phase. So I'm going to describe these red bits in some detail over the next few slides. So the first thing that we needed to do, once we had the 4 development agencies put together some concepts, we took those to the teachers in each of the countries. So again, the NPMs in each country needed to do this and to put that in appropriate language where necessary. So we were asking the teachers to think about whether the task concept looked as though they'd engage the students, whether they'd be appropriate for the students in terms of the knowledge that they might have from the classroom, whether the socio-cultural context would be appropriate in terms of understanding some of the aspects of the task. Of course, some tasks have got more cultural specificity in them than others. And we wanted to look at whether students of different age and abilities would be able to engage with the tasks within similar time frames. And most importantly, because we're looking at skills and skill development, we wanted to find out whether the tasks looked as though they were likely to be able to differentiate or discriminate between the students. So that was the first component of the development phase. Next, we went to working with individual students, and this was called the cognitive laboratories. So while we're waiting for that slide to come up, cognitive laboratories, here in Australia we refer to this more as think aloud protocols. In other words, we're looking at students moving through the early tasks in their early development and trying to work out whether they are picking up on the skills in which we're most interested. So the students were working online on their computers with these, and while they were working online we had the researcher observers watching them, taking notes about what the students were doing and prompting the students to talk through, talking about what the thinking was that was going on for them as they actually interacted with the tasks. So these had to be set up in each country with about a 45 to 50-minute class time for each of the scenarios. When we say scenario, these are large tasks, some of them. Some of them are quite small, like 10 minutes. Others will take a full class period. And so what we needed here was that each student had access to an internet-enabled computer, And when we were looking at how the students were engaging with them at this stage, we wanted to have students whom the teachers believed would be acting at different ability levels. So we could see whether in fact the students who might be seen to be lower in some of these skills areas, in fact could they engage with it, as well as some of the higher ability students. When we say a task-specific environment, this was really, we were saying to teachers, we need the students to be totally focused on this task and not to be distracted by what was going on. And of course in each country we had to comply with whatever the recruitment and informed consent protocols were in each country. In the next part of the project and its development, which is pretty much where we are now in the pilots and the trials. Sorry, I've moved on a little bit too fast there. The pilot was about having full classes of students engaged with the tasks. So the major purpose of this was to see, could a teacher manage the classroom environment? So those of you who are teachers or who've worked with computers in classrooms will know that there are lots of little hiccups that you get while you're working in classrooms. And here, of course, we had the added issue of having tasks that were requiring multiple students to be interacting online as well. So there are a whole lot of classroom management issues that we needed to deal with. We also wanted to know whether our platforms were able to cope with the traffic as we were working. So that was pretty much a checking phase. Now we're into trial with the collaborative problem-solving tasks, and as you can see there, the purpose of this is to develop large samples for test scoring and equating, and we also have the tasks being administered independently by teachers. So rather than as in the pilot where we had our researcher observers there, the teachers are pretty much all alone in the classrooms dealing with what's going on there. And variously across the countries, we have different numbers of schools engaged in this part of the work, and I'll show you some of the way that that's set up in a little bit further down the track. So, what are we actually doing at this part of the project? We're going to have a little bit of a look now at some of the natural characteristics of the tasks. So we have the two major skills areas, the ICT literacy and the collaborative problem solving, and here we can see that there are particular characteristics of each set. That with the collaborative problem solving, it's characterized by each individual having unique access to different skills or resources. So there's a dependency between students. Some students have access to some things, other students have access to something else. So there's automatically a dependence relationship, and that dependence relationship means that the students are required to collaborate, and so that way we can see how quickly, how easily and how functionally they start to collaborate. The other aspect about the collaborative problem-solving tasks is that there is a component of ambiguity about them. And what this means is that students need to identify and define the problem space. They need to work out what is the problem that has to be solved, how can they go about solving it, what resources do they have that they can bring to it, and then they need to communicate that. So the ambiguity around the problem space and about the whole task means that we require collaboration. So they're two of the major characteristics of the collaborative problem-solving tasks. When we look at the ICT learning and networks areas, we can see that they are characterized by rich information. For example, what we have there is that there are real resources on the web that are brought to bear in these environments. We have real cloud-based tools that are used. We have absolutely real environments. So this is not a walled garden where the students are actually within a particular environment. They go all over the web following particular clues and using particular tools and accessing networks of people. When we say networks of people, though, that is circumscribed by the way the tasks are set up so that the students within the task actually are interacting and working with each other.